Gentlemen, welcome to the Be the Man podcast. I'm the host, Greg Denning. I am the creator and coach of the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe. Today, we're going to talk about times and situations where violence is the answer and perhaps the only answer. There are times and situations in life where people or situations will only respond to violence, and we have to have the clarity, first of all, to be able to make clear decisions and to be able to distinguish what those situations and people are, and to be able to have the competence and confidence to use them appropriately at the time. There's a situation with the Ukrainian Russian invasion into the Ukraine. There's a situation there in this interchange that just brought this principle to the surface for me. And I want to share some of the details so that we can all take this at a personal level and say, when do I apply this? When does this actually work? Because as much as we would all love to live in peaceful times and places, and that we'd avoid all of that. And maybe some of you will. Honestly, maybe some of you will. You'll live your whole life without encountering a situation or a circumstance or a person where you really genuinely have to use violence. And I hope that's the case. That's really great. But seeing that we're in the last several years of a fourth turning, and there's some great videos on YouTube about the fourth turning. There's the excellent book called The Fourth Turning, and one of the authors has passed away, but the author who's still alive, he's done some additional videos about it, and they wrote it in the third turning, and really predicted we'd be in the fourth turning, and we're just in a chaotic time. And Ray Dalio's excellent new book on the changing world order is talking about how the entire world economy is going to shift, and it's in that time period, and there's evidence of that happening. So it's a time of chaos and upheaval, and it's governments overstepping their bounds and underperforming. It's nation against nation. There's a lot of civil unrest and the little sparks of a potential civil conflict, right? There's a lot going on. And then just even down to regular everyday life, where you may have a run-in with a bully or a thief or whatever, right? Those kind of things do happen. We live in a world where there is malice. Yeah, I wish we didn't. I genuinely wish we didn't. We all sit around and dream of this time and this place where we can go and there's no theft and there's no harm and there's no conflict. There are no bullies and no tyrants and no dictators and no criminals and thugs and people who wish to do you or your family harm. But the reality is we live in a world that has malice and darkness and evil. And so because of that, we have a moral responsibility and obligation to be prepared to defend and protect, right? We don't go looking for fights. I have to emphasize that so much. We're not looking for a fight. I don't want to fight. I hope you don't want to fight. We're not anxious to go out and hurt people and kill people. But man, I hope you feel with conviction that if somebody brings a threat to your doorstep, they better fully expect a response from you that's powerful and dangerous. Because at some point, gentlemen, only really good, really dangerous men will keep tyrants and bullies from committing atrocities against mankind. And I want to invite you to consider if you will be one of those men. I hope you will be. For me personally, that's a mark of manliness, that you're willing and able to protect yourself and your family and people who cannot protect themselves, and in some cases will not. I get it. There are incredibly passive people. And in some instances, that's quite admirable. I understand that. I get that. Like, there are people who just want to have love and kindness and compassion. I get that. I can even admire it and respect it. I can understand it. But many of us need to be warriors as well as poets and philosophers. And if we go with the archetype of the king, right? In my mind, the king is a poet and a philosopher and a warrior. He can think, he can teach, and he can fight. Because when there's a time to fight, you have to be able to fight. You have to be willing and able. And that comes with training and preparation and knowing your stuff. And again, I just have to keep emphasizing, some people will not understand or respond to anything else but violence. If they live by the sword, if that is their language, if they're so blinded by rage or hatred or ignorance that they only understand violence. And again, I believe this is rare, and it's only a few people. But there are those people who do not understand anything else, and they will bring violence and the threat of death to your doorstep, so to speak, or bring it to you and your family, and you need to be able to respond. And again, I just want to reemphasize this. There are tyrants and bullies out there, and criminals and thugs and trash bags who will bring that fight to you or to people around you, or you might be out on vacation or doing your thing, and somebody brings that threat. I hope you'll be a warrior and be willing to protect. And that really good men and really dangerous good men are the only ones that will keep evil at bay, that will force those punks back into the hole they crawled out of. And I want you to think about that. Really, like, consider that, how if there aren't truly good men who are truly dangerous, then those tyrants and dictators and bullies, whether it be massive governments or little neighborhood gangs or just punks, they're going to take advantage of people. They're going to harm people. They're going to do things that they have no moral compass. They do whatever they feel like doing, and they will run all over people and commit every kind of crime and atrocity. And the only thing that stops them is a good, dangerous man stopping them. And so there was this article recently in the news, and it sparked this, and I wanted to share it with you because it's so relevant. It's interesting, right? Now, obviously, this was on the news. I don't know all the exact details. I don't speak Russian, so I'm reading the English translation that was on CNN. And it was they called him the ex-president of Russia, and I don't know how to pronounce his name correctly, but it's Medvedev, or I don't know how to say it, but he was talking about how, in response to Russian aggression in Ukraine, thus far, the US and the Western world has put out strong statements of disapproval. Do you think they really care about strong public statements of disapproval? Really? Does it seem to be affecting them? You guys, that's akin to, I was laying in bed last night, I'm thinking about this, and I was talking to my wife. I'm like, okay, let's imagine with me, gentlemen, you are an observer of a playground at an elementary school, and a bunch of big kids, big mean bullies, come over and just start beating the tar out of one weak kid, and they're just wailing on him, total disadvantage. And the teachers are there, and the principal's there, and they're standing there, and perhaps we put a school officer there who has the power to stop this. And they're all standing there saying out loud, so everyone can hear, "We strongly disapprove of what you're doing." Those are our strong statements. We don't like it. That's not nice what you're doing. And they're expecting their words to have some kind of effect on bullies who really could give a crap about your words. So then the next step, they put these sanctions in place, right? And we'll get into this in a second. Don't misunderstand me. We should use words. Absolutely, we should use words. We should do everything in our power to. Violence is a last resort. But I guess what I'm saying is it has to be a resort. You can't just assume that everything else will work and you'll never get to that. It has to be one of the tools in your toolbox. It has to be one of the weapons in your arsenal, right? And we'll get into words and power, and maybe the things you say would be enough, and maybe the threat of force or the threat of violence would be enough. But in this instance, they say, well, okay, we're going to do some sanctions. Now, this is the translated response of the ex-president, his response to sanctions. This is like, it's sad and it's laughable. This is what he said. He said, I believe it is obvious to intelligent people. Sanctions are a myth, a threat, a figure of speech. I am fundamentally indifferent to these widely publicized restrictions of rights abroad. Whoa. Actually, I want to thank the guy for publicly saying, your words are idle and empty and meaningless, and I am indifferent to your sanctions. Like, do you think we care? Right? Do you think these people who go and brutally attack another nation, do you think they care? And they didn't see this coming? They weren't expecting it? Do you think somebody who's willing to just rob and beat and rape and plunder, do you think they give a crap about you coming up and saying strongly, I really disapprove of what you're doing? If someone who's willing to commit an atrocity has the psychological or moral or depravity to commit the act, do you think they're worried about what you might say? Right? Or the threat of taking away some of their rights and privileges? Okay, let's keep going. He says, quote, the reason for the sanctions is this. It is political impotence. Oh, man, he called it what it is. Right back to their faces. Your sanctions are political impotence. He continues, arising from the inability to change Russia's course. He's just totally calling it out. You're impotent. You can't stop it. You can't change their course. And so you try to throw out some sanctions and some strong statements. Also, he says, a hope to make up for the shameful decisions like the cowardly flight from Afghanistan. And my words now, I promise the world is watching. Tyrants and bullies and dictators and despots, they are all watching, and they're constantly watching. They're watching at a local level to see how you protect your family neighborhood, and they're watching at a global level to see if there are good, dangerous men who will step up and stop them. And when they see cowardice, when they see impotence, they jump out and take advantage of it. That's what bullies do. You know this already, right? That's exactly what bullies do. They're opportunists. They're looking for someone who looks weak, who looks vulnerable, and they look around, they're paying attention. I grew up in the streets, man, and we've traveled all over the world to some really dangerous places. And I'm observant, I'm watching this all the time because I was in the streets for years. I understood how they work and how they think. And I can pick it up. I can spot it whenever we're traveling anywhere. I can see it coming. And I can think of specific instances where we were in different nations and I could just see, I could literally So I pointed out to my kids, my kids, like, those guys are spotting us, right? They're scoping this out to see. They're looking for people who look vulnerable or opportunities where they can take advantage of people. And they're paying attention. They're looking around. It's like, are there any cops? Is there anyone here that's going to defend these people or defend themselves? And then they wait until there are no police force around. There's no one who would step up and be a man and defend the people. And then they look for the person that looks vulnerable or weak, and then they take advantage of them. That's exactly what they're looking for. And so it happens at a global level and local level. They're watching you. They're watching your family. They're watching your neighborhood. They're seeing if you're tough. And okay, this happens even in a school situation. It happens in a work situation, in a community situation. They're always bullies. And maybe it's not leading to violence or theft, but taking advantage of you. They're taking advantage of you at work, in a work situation, whether it's some kind of work competition inside the business or some kind of competition outside the business. People are always, and this is a tragedy. And again, I'm an optimist here. I believe in the goodness of humanity, but there are a few people who are always looking for opportunities to take advantage of others, right? To do wrong, or in a sense, maybe their thinking is messed, where they just think, hey, if there's an opportunity here to get an advantage for myself, I'm going to take it. And I've heard people even articulate that, like, that they think it's justified. If they can get away with it, then it's justified. I've literally heard people say that. Good people, but their psychology, their conclusions, and maybe they know better, right? A lot of people who do wrong, they don't know any better. They were raised in horrible situations, and they were never taught that. It's a survival mode. They grew up in the jungle, and it's kill or be killed. But all of that aside, there are people who would take advantage of you. And so if they sense that you are weak, they will push you around. And that's in every kind of situation. Like, let that sink in. Like, where might this apply? Even in your own home, they'll push boundaries and try to take advantage of weaknesses. Now, this may not be with malice, like in your own home, right? They're just trying, like, man, if I keep pushing on dad because he's such a softie, like, I get to eat donuts every day. I don't have to do dinner. I get to watch movies and play my game because all I got to do is push a little bit. He just push over, right? So there's no real malice there. They're not trying to hurt or harm anyone, but they'll push you around, and people will push you around all over the place. It's just nature. It's just this system of hierarchy. And so we have to have a backbone. And in some instances, gentlemen, a backbone and the balls enough to stand up, especially to tyrants and bullies. But they are looking for opportunities to take advantage. They're looking for weakness, cowardice, impotence. And he called it out. And he noticed the cowardly flight from Afghanistan, as it's quoted here. Again, I didn't translate this. I'm just reading the English translation that's in the news. But like, whatever was actually said, somebody wrote this and is illustrating the point that others are noticing. Is like, yeah, we're watching. And what about the other big bullies and tyrants around the world that are seeing, hey man, let's see if the US or any of these other Western countries are have the backbone enough to stand up against tyrants and bullies. And man, if they don't, that's our green light. That's our green light to go. And many people believe that China has they do. And they've said it blatantly. They have their eye on invading Taiwan and getting it back. And they've threatened to, I read this translation of a speech. They said they will crush the head of anyone who tries to get in their way. Right. He goes on. So this ex-president currently serves as the deputy chairman of the Security Council. He says these amazing prohibitions, speaking of the sanctions, will change nothing, of course. Even the ignorant people at the State Department know this. Oh, man. He's just calling it out. Ooh. He says the military operation, he doesn't call it a war or an invasion of Ukraine. He said the military operation, referring to what they're doing in Ukraine, will be conducted in full until all the objectives of the president of Russia has set out are achieved, no more and no less, as it was in a similar situation in 2008, which they invaded the country of Georgia. So here's this ex-president calling it for what it is, saying, yeah, you're cowards and you're impotent and your idle threats mean nothing. And your strong statements of disapproval don't stop anybody, right? And even the sanctions, they're not stopping them. They don't care. So I circle back again. I'm just going to keep saying this and keep emphasizing this. Only good men who are dangerous men can stop true bullies and tyrants who are just filled with malice and darkness and evil. When they care about nothing else but taking advantage of others for their own advantage, they have to answer with violence. Now, lest you think I'm looking for a fight and always just wanting to turn to violence. Again, violence should be the last resort. I can't emphasize that enough. So we start with language, right? And we hope that negotiations will work. And they often have. I've been in dangerous situations where I talked myself out of it. And man, I'm glad I was able to do that, because we would have been a world in trouble. There was once a situation, many of you have heard the story. There was a situation in a foreign country where about 30 men, many of them armed with these huge clubs, surrounded my van with my family. And they were slamming the side of my van and just screaming, yelling. It was intense. And getting out and fighting that large of a group, and they blocked off the roadways with nails and tires, and like we were trapped. And they were the only way out of there was man, it could have been a real fight, but it would have got real ugly, right? And my children know how to fight, so we would have put up a fight. But the best situation is talk yourself out of it. And that's what I did. So for about 30 minutes, we just apologized, told them how sorry we were, and we didn't want any trouble. I had little children and my wife, and we were able to get out of it, just talk our way out of it. There's been many other situations. So learn how to talk your way out of it. And again, roll with me here on this whole spectrum, right? It's not just violent situations where you're being threatened with a weapon, but it's just in everyday situations of life, of like, learn how to stand your ground effectively. Again, don't go looking for any kind of fight. Don't go picking fights verbally or physically with others. Don't go looking for arguments. But if you are thoughtful and educated and prepared and articulate, then there are, quote, fights at all levels where you're standing for principles and practices and trying to do what's right in every situation. So yes, cultivate intellectual and verbal competence, right? Learn how to win with words, how to persuade with paragraphs, how to influence with intelligence. Learn how to speak well. Learn how to write well. Many of you could be very dangerous with your words, because you can draft an idea, an argument that moves people. And I hope you do, that calls them into action or stops them in their shoes, right? In their tracks, with your words or your look or your demeanor or your posture. There's actually tons of research on this. The way you carry yourself, people read it immediately. And bullies and people looking to take advantage of you, they're looking for weakness or cowardice or impotence, they can read it. There's this instinctual thing. There's actually some science behind this, that it's just in nature. It's instinctual that we read people almost instantaneously and subconsciously. We read people to know if, like, should I beware of this person or can I take advantage of this person? Even if you're a good person, you're not taking advantage, you realize, okay, I have power here. Or like, whoa, don't mess with that guy. And I want to invite you, gentlemen, to be that guy. Not that you're a jerk, not that you become the bully or the tyrant or the dictator. Especially do not do that in your own home. or in your business. Don't be the dictator. Don't be the tyrant. Don't be the bully. You don't have to be mean and you don't have to be scary. You actually want to be respected. You want to earn respect. You want to earn authority. So don't lean into your title or your position or your badge or your uniform or whatever else is, how much money you have or any of that. Come back to character and integrity. That you're respected and you're tough. You're really good and really dangerous in the good sense. That people know, like, man, and this is what I want. I want people to know that I'm approachable. I'm a very nice guy. I'm a very good guy, but do not mess with me. Don't cross me. Do not try to take advantage of me. Let's be men like that. What if there were more men like that in the world? What if every man, true man, was that way? That he walked around and he had a big heart and a sharp intellect and a bright mind. But man, do not mess with him. You try to cross him, you try to push him around, you try to take advantage of him or his family, you try to bring any threat or violence, you will pay for that. Right? And if you bring the threat of death, you will pay for it with your life. I genuinely hope you never have to take another person's life. I really do. But man, if somebody brings the threat of death to you or your family and brings it to your doorstep, you better be ready to answer in kind. Because some people won't stop otherwise. So yes, use your words. Like, learn to articulate, learn to think, learn to carry yourself with strength. Sometimes you just have to show a threat of force and people back down. I've seen this and I've experienced it myself. A bully's back right down. And so you say, no, man, I'm not messing with you. I was I was leading a humanitarian expedition one night in a foreign land, and I was running an errand, and it happened to be late at night, and I took a shortcut through a dark alley, and there was two dudes, and they were totally on drugs. Man, they saw me and they're like, "Oh yeah, here's this white boy. We're gonna take advantage of him." They turned around. He whistled to his buddy, like, "Look back," and they turned around like ready to just rob me. And I reached in my pocket and pulled out my knife, got in a fighting stance. I was like, "Let's go, suckers." And man, they were not expecting that. They thought they were just going to be able to just take whatever they wanted. And they were not happy about it. But man, they backed away and took off, like slunk into the shadows like the slime they were. Because I was like, "Nope, let's go. You're not taking anything. I'm going to take you out if you come at me." And, I shouldn't have been there, and I should have been with somebody. But a show of strength and force will put them in stop them in their tracks. So if the fight comes to my doorstep, you better believe that I'm going to come out with strength and strategy, right? But the challenge is, if you have become soft with semantics, meaning that your own language is soft, or in the ridiculous case of some societal things that are going on right now, people are acting like words said to them are acts of violence, even coming down to which pronoun you happen to use. If we get to a place where we're so weak and so soft and offended, and we think an quote inappropriate pronoun is an act of violence, what's going to happen when that person gets smashed in the face with a hard object by someone who's a real tyrant, who actually brings violence? Then soft, even inadvertently misspoken words won't seem like acts of violence anymore, will they? And we have to have a reality check here. We have to change our perspective. And and get clear about real violence and real bullies and real tyrants and this pretended like sensitivity, thinking, going around and being so fragile to everything around us. Don't get caught up in that. And to you, gentlemen, I invite you to rise above even harsh criticism and mean things that people might say or do. If you allow yourself to be so sensitive to petty meanness that it rattles you mentally or emotionally or spiritually or even physically, some of you just have to get a mean glance or a mean word from someone or a mean comment on your social media, and it just cripples you. You curl up in a ball, either literally or figuratively. You're lying in the corner in the fetal position because someone said something mean or didn't say something nice. We got to have more toughness than that without becoming calloused. I think that's an important distinction there. Have some tough skin without becoming calloused. A little tricky, right? You're like, wait a minute, isn't tough skin having a callus? And you don't want to become a callous person or jaded, and you don't want to be edgy. You don't want to say, yeah, I'm ready to fight, and then you go looking for fights. You want to avoid fighting at all costs. And I've found that men who are really trained and really competent and powerful, they don't have to fight because they know how to. They rarely have to defend themselves because they can. And it's obvious. Isn't that insightful and powerful? And honestly, a little ironic, right? It's when you have the ability to bring the fight that you often don't have to, because you can, and people notice that and they see it. And then you use your intellect, you use strategy and strength to avoid situations. And if they come to you, you say, okay, look, this is how this is going to go. I'm giving you an out here. And if you don't take it, you better buckle up because it's coming. So what do you need to do, gentlemen, to up your strength and to up your strategy, to level up your mind, body, and spirit, which is, it's the whole, that's the first trifecta in the triple trifecta, right? For the Be the Man, is that the first trifecta is mind, body, and spirit. And it starts there. You have to get yourself mentally, spiritually, at a soul level, and physically battle ready. You're in a place where you can't have anyone like this ex-president calling you impotent and weak and cowardly. If you have the spiritual fortitude and the mental fortitude and the physical fortitude to defend yourself. Whoa, I love this stuff. So, honest questions are, what are you going to do to cultivate that? To cultivate your intellect and your verbal competence? What are you going to do to cultivate your physical strength and stamina? What are you going to do to cultivate your emotional strength? Some of us are compromised because of emotional weakness. That we just get rattled so easily. We get distracted so easily. We get overwhelmed mentally or emotionally or spiritually so easily. That makes us vulnerable. That exposes our weakness. You got to have some emotional grit and toughness, so that you got to overcome this hypersensitivity. And that's easy when you can dismiss things that are just absurd. Stop taking things so personally. Realize that some people are just going to be mean. And in many of those cases, it has nothing to do with you. It's just about them and where they're at. And it starts in small ways, but it goes into the big ways. And you got to be able to be prepared and operate clearly in all those situations and circumstances. Practice that. I mean, this is what it's all about. Start practicing. And yeah, initially it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be precise. You're going to fumble and fail and flop. That's how it goes with any first attempts. So you might want to, maybe you maybe feel uncomfortable working out or in the gym. You know what to do, but you got to get your body ready. Maybe you realize, hey man, I got to up my intellect here. And you start diving into some more challenging books. And initially you're like, man, I don't even know what this guy's saying. I've never heard or seen that vocabulary word. And you're going to feel weak, and you're going to feel dumb, and you're going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to flounder and flop and look a little bit ridiculous. This is one thing. I'm going to throw this in here, gentlemen. This is one thing that stops so many men from leveling up, because they are so afraid of looking like failures. They're afraid to try new things, to get into things they know they ought to and they've wanted to, but like, man, they don't want to look stupid. So like, I really want to do martial arts. I want to learn shooting, or I want to get into debate so I can, up my intellectual and my intellectual game and learn how to articulate. I'm going to start writing. I'm going to start blogging or writing a book. I'm going to try something. They're so afraid of looking stupid or looking like a failure. They don't do it. And so it's self-sabotage. They remain weak and incompetent, and therefore impotent, because they're afraid of how it will look as they're learning these new skills. Just a few weeks ago, I went and took this training, and I knew I was going in as the least qualified. I knew I was going in. They all had way, way more experience than I did. But that's where I want to be. I want to be exercising with guys that are more fit than I am. They're stronger than I am. I want to be training with people who are more competent than I am. I want to surround myself with people that are better than me, because it forces me to level up my game. I'm going to learn so much more, so much faster, instead of, I'm going to protect my ego here. I'm going to make sure I don't look too stupid. So I'm going to go surround myself with people that are kind of my level, or maybe even a little lower than me, so it makes me feel good and look good, right? That's just self-sabotage. I'm not helping anyone. If I really want to level up, I'm going to get around people that are way better than I am. I'm going to stretch myself, and there's going to be some pain there. There's going to be some pain in learning, and there's going to be pain in progress. Be willing to pay the price. Be willing to be vulnerable. Be willing to look stupid and fumble and fail as you're leveling up. So put together a plan, gentlemen. And this is one of the things we cover very thoroughly in the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe. That's really the essence of it, is like, what are the tools and the resources? What's the training that needs to happen to be a whole man? So holistic optimization. You'll hear me talk about that in every episode, because you're trying to get your entire life dialed in so that you are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially competent and prepared. Woo, I love this stuff. So create a plan for yourself. If you are ready to level up, join the masterclass. But whatever you do, don't just do nothing. Create a plan right now. So stop whatever you're doing. Grab a piece of paper, open notes on your phone, jot down a plan of things you can start working on immediately. It might be just, okay, hey, there's that book. I'm going to grab a book. Hey, go grab my book list. I have an awesome book list for men. Just grab it, free book list, and just pick one book and start. Get an audiobook. Well, thank you, by the way, for listening to this. Like that's you're already doing the first step by listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow me on social. So I'm just going to keep sharing this stuff. This is part of my life mission and work, is just to help men, be really good and really dangerous and competent and prepared. Share this. Share it with other men. Encourage other men to train together, to read together, to learn together, to work together. Please raise your children to be strong and strategic, to cultivate that intellectual and spiritual and physical competence. Raise your kids to do that. Get your family on board. Get your community on board. Get your friends and your extended family on board. If you are a leader, if you have a business or a team, wherever you're at, be this lifting power. Be the tide. Join this movement with me. Let's raise this whole community of men who are strong and capable and competent and able to be good enough and dangerous enough to keep malice and evil and rotten people in their holes. That is how we can live a life that is peaceful and beautiful. That's you've heard me say this. I'm going to keep saying this because I love it. That's the motto of Krav Maga, right? It's so that one may walk in peace. So we learn how to be dangerous so that we and those around us may walk in peace. So, gentlemen, what are you going to begin doing and do consistently from here on out to be really good and really dangerous? Be the man.